The Tomini Tang is one of the most underrated yet absolutely fascinating marine fish swimming through the coral reefs of the Indo-Pacific. With its distinctive bronze-colored body, brilliant white tail that glows underwater, and those bright orange-tipped fins that look like they've been dipped in fire, this little tang packs a serious punch in the personality department. You'll typically see these guys methodically grazing along the reef structure, their specialized bristle-like teeth working overtime to scrape every bit of algae and detritus from the rocks. Unlike some of their larger tang cousins, the Tomini Tang brings all the attitude and algae-eating prowess in a more compact, reef-friendly package. They truly are the unsung heroes of reef maintenance, working tirelessly to keep their underwater neighborhoods clean and balanced. Welcome to the 5th episode of the All About documentary series, starring the Tomini Tang. Let's rewind the clock back to 1955, when the world of marine biology was about to get a new addition to the Tang family. Dr. John Ernest Randall, an American ichthyologist who would go on to become a legend in the field of marine fish taxonomy, was conducting research in the waters around Indonesia. While studying the diverse fish populations in the Gulf of Tomini, near Sulawesi, Indonesia, he discovered what would become known as the Tomini Tang. Dr. Randall formally described this species with the type locality being Stay Island in the Gulf of Tomini, which is exactly where this fish gets its common name from. What's really fascinating is that Dr. Randall went on to describe over 800 new species of fish during his career, making him one of the most prolific ichthyologists in history. The Tomini Tang represents just one of his many contributions to our understanding of marine biodiversity. Unlike the Yellow Tang, which became commercially important for the aquarium trade much earlier, the Tomini Tang remained relatively unknown to the aquarium hobby until the 1990s, when marine aquarium keeping really started to take off. It wasn't until the early 2000s that these fish began appearing regularly in the aquarium trade, initially commanding premium prices due to their rarity and the difficulty in collecting them from their remote Indo-Pacific location. Breaking down the scientific classification of the Tomini Tang takes us on a journey through the tree of life. Starting at the top, we have the domain Eukaryota, meaning these organisms with cells contain a nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. Moving down the kingdom Animalia, which groups all multicellular organisms that obtain energy by consuming other organisms. The phylum Chordata includes all animals with a spinal cord, which gives us everything from fish to mammals. The class Ctenochaetus represent the ray fin fish, which makes up about 96% of all fish species and are characterized by their fins being supported by bony rays. The order Acanthuriformes is relatively recent classification that includes tangs, surgeonfish, and their close relatives, and the family Acanthuridae encompasses all the tangs, surgeonfish, and unicorn fish, which are characterized by their laterally compressed bodies and the presence of sharp spines near the tail fin. The genus Ctenochaetus is particularly interesting because it represents the Bristletooth tangs, which are distinguished from other tangs by their specialized feeding apparatus. Finally, we have the species Tominiensis, which literally means from Tomini, referencing the Gulf of Tomini where this species was first discovered. What makes the Ctenochaetus genus special is that these fish have evolved specialized bristle-like teeth that are perfect for scraping algae and detritus from the surfaces, making them incredibly efficient cleaners in the reef ecosystem. The Tomini Tang is a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering, perfectly adapted for life on the coral reef. These fish typically reach a maximum size of about 6 inches, making them one of the smaller members of the tang family, which is part of what makes them so appealing to the aquarium keepers. Their body shape is a classic tang profile, laterally compressed, almost disc-like, which allows them to navigate effortlessly through the complex three-dimensional maze of coral formations. Coloration is where things get really interesting. Juvenile Tomini Tangs start out with a tan or light brown base color with a beautiful yellow, blue, and white highlights scattered across their body, and as they mature, their coloration deepens to a rich bronze or dark brown color, and their tail fins become increasingly bluish white, and those distinctive orange-tipped dorsal fins really start to pop. Like all members of the Acanthuridae family, Tomini Tangs possess the characteristic scalpel-like spines on either side of their tail, which they can erect when threatened or during aggressive encounters. These spines are razor sharp and can inflict serious wounds, which is why they're called surgeon fish. The most remarkable feature of the Tomini Tang, however, is their specialized feeding apparatus. Their teeth are modified into hundreds of tiny bristles that work like a scrub brush, allowing them to efficiently scrape algae, detritus, and microorganisms from the rock surfaces. This bristletooth adaptation is so efficient that these fish can extract nutrients from surfaces that appear completely bare to our eyes. They also have a highly developed pharyngeal meal, essentially a second set of teeth in their throat, so that's going to help them process the material they've scraped up. Their digestive system is specially adapted for processing all this plant matter, with an extremely long intestinal tract that allows them to extract maximum nutrition from their algae-based diet. Lifespan of a Tomini Tang in the wild is estimated to be anywhere from 10 to 15 years, with some potentially living even longer in optimal conditions. The Tomini Tang calls the tropical waters of Indo-Pacific home, with a range that stretches from Indonesia, the Philippines, all the way to Papua New Guinea in the northern portions of the Great Barrier Reef. These fish are most commonly found in the central and western Pacific, particularly around the Coral Triangle region, which is considered the epicenter of marine biodiversity. Their preferred habitat consists of shallow coral reefs, coral slope drop-offs, and sheltered coastal lagoons, typically at depths ranging from 5 to 40 meters, though they're most commonly encountered in the 10 to 20 meter range. What's fascinating about their habitat presence is that they seem to gravitate towards areas of dense coral growth where there's an abundance of surfaces to graze on. You'll often find them in areas where there's moderate to strong water flow, which helps bring fresh nutrients and oxygen while also helping keep the algae they feed on healthy and growing. Unlike some tang species that prefer open water or sandy areas, many tangs are very much creatures of that reef. They want a ton of rock to swim through. They spend most of their time in and around those coral formations, caves, overhangs, where they can find both food and shelter. The temperature range in their natural habitat typically falls between 24 and 28 degrees Celsius, so 75 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty standard for tropical reef fish. What's particularly interesting is that these fish often form loose aggregations, especially during feeding, so you might see groups of 6 to 10 working over a particularly productive patch of algae-covered reef, though they're just as commonly found swimming solo. Their habitat is also characterized by excellent water quality, crystal clear water with stable pH levels and virtually no pollution or contaminant. This pristine environment is part of what makes them so sensitive to water quality changes in captivity. The reefs they call home are some of the most biodiverse ecosystems on the planet, and the Tomini Tang plays a crucial role in maintaining the health of those systems through their constant algae grazing activities. The reproductive behavior of the Tomini Tang follows the typical pattern of many reef fish. Those specific details about their breeding habits in the wild remain somewhat mysterious due to their relatively recent discovery and remote nature of their habitat. Like most tangs, they are broadcast spawners, meaning they release eggs and sperm into the water column where fertilization occurs. The spawning typically takes place during the warmer months when water temperatures are optimal and food availability is at its peak. During spawning season, you'll often see males establishing territories on the reef usually in areas with strong current, that will help carry that offspring away from the reef and into the open water. The males will display to attract the females, showing off their brightest colors and most impressive fin displays. And then when a female is ready, they'll approach the male. Together they'll rise up into the water column, releasing their gametes simultaneously. A single female can release thousands of eggs during the spawning event. Though the exact number hasn't been well documented for this species, the eggs are pelagic, meaning they float in the open ocean and are completely transparent, making them nearly invisible to predators. After about 24 hours, the eggs hatch into tiny larvae that are also transparent and planktonic. These larvae will drift in the open ocean for several weeks to months, feeding on microscopic plankton and gradually developing into juvenile fish. During this planktonic stage, they are at the mercy of the currents and countless predators, which is why fish need to produce so many offspring to ensure at least some survive to adulthood. When the larvae are ready to settle, they'll seek out appropriate reef habitat, usually guided by chemical cues from the reef itself. The transformation from transparent larvae to juvenile fish is quite dramatic, and the young fish will quickly begin to develop their characteristic coloration and behavior patterns. Unfortunately, like many marine fish, the Tomini Tangs have never been successfully bred in captivity, which means all the fish in the aquarium trade are still wild-caught specimens. Life on the coral reef is a constant game of survival, and the Tomini Tang faces numerous predators throughout its life cycle. Starting with the larval stage, these tiny transparent larvae are vulnerable to virtually every planktonic predator in the ocean, from other fish larvae to jellyfish, comb jellies, and even microscopic copepods. The mortality rate during this stage is incredibly high, which is why fish like the Tomini Tang need to produce so much. Once they settle on the reefs as juveniles, they face a new set of challenges. Small reef predators like lizardfish, hawkfish, and groupers all pose a threat to young Tomini Tang. Juveniles must quickly learn to navigate the reef, finding hiding places and avoiding becoming someone else's lunch. As adults, Tomini Tangs are still vulnerable to larger predators, though their speed and agility and defense capabilities make them much harder targets. Reef sharks, particularly the gray reef and the white tips, are probably the most significant predators in the wild. These sharks are perfectly adaptive for hunting on the reef and can easily overtake a tang in open water. Moray eels are another major threat, using their serpentine bodies to hunt tangs in the caves and the crevices where they might seek shelter. Large groupers and other predatory fish like barracuda and trevally can also pose a threat, especially to smaller individuals. What's interesting is that the Tomini Tangs have evolved several defense mechanisms to deal with these threats. Their laterally compressed body shape allows them to dart quickly between the coral and rocks and squeeze into narrow crevices where larger predators can't follow. Their sharp scalpel-like spines can inflict some serious wounds on any predator that gets too close, and they're not afraid to use them. When threatened, they can also change their coloration slightly, becoming darker to blend in better with their surroundings. Perhaps most importantly is they're incredibly fast and agile swimmers, capable of making sudden direction changes that can confuse a predator. Like many reef fish, they also benefit from the complex structure of the reef itself, so that's going to provide countless hiding places and escape routes for them to get away. The diet of the Tomini Tang is what really sets them apart from many other reef fish, and it's the reason they're so valuable in both the wild and in aquariums. These fish are primarily herbivores, with their diet consisting of almost entirely algae, detritus, and microscopic organisms that live within these materials. Their specialized Bristletooth feeding apparatus allows them to be incredibly efficient grazers, capable of scraping algae from surfaces that appear to be completely clean to our eyes. In the wild, they'll spend most of their days methodically working over rock surfaces, coral skeletons, and other hard substrates, scraping off thin films of algae and biofilm that constantly grow in these nutrient-rich environments. What's particularly fascinating is that they're not just eating algae, they're also consuming an entire microbial community that lives within that algae, including bacteria, protozoa, and other microorganisms. This makes their diet incredibly rich in nutrients and protein, despite appearing to be purely vegetarian. The detritus they consume also contains partially decomposed organic matter, which provides additional nutrition. Their long digestive tract allows them to extract maximum nutrition from the plant-based diet, and the pharyngeal meal helps them process tough cellular walls of algae and other plant material. In addition to algae, They also consume small amounts of zooplankton when the opportunity arises, particularly during spawning season when planktonic organisms are more abundant. The feeding behavior is incredibly systematic. They'll work over a section of reef methodically, moving from one area to another in a pattern that ensures they don't overgraze any particular spot. This behavior is crucial for maintaining the health of the reef ecosystem, as it prevents any single species of algae becoming dominant and potentially smothering those coral polyps. The role of the Tomini Tang as an algae grazer can't be overstated. They're literally one of the reef's janitors, constantly cleaning surfaces and preventing the buildup of algae that could harm corals and other reef organisms. Their constant grazing also helps stimulate new algae growth, which provides food for other herbivorous fish and maintains the complex food web that supports the entire reef ecosystem. Like all marine fish, the Tomini Tang is susceptible to various diseases and parasites, though they're generally considered to be relatively hardy fish when kept in proper conditions. The most common health issue affecting tangs, including the Tomini Tang, is marine ick, also known as white spot disease. This parasitic infection is caused by cryptocaryon irritants and manifests as white spots on the fish's body and fins, along with increased breathing rate and scraping behavior against the rocks and other surfaces. The parasite goes through a complex life cycle that includes both free swimming and attached stages, making it particularly challenging to treat. What makes tangs particularly susceptible to ick is their naturally thinner slime coat compared to other fish, which provides less protection against parasitic invasion. Marine velvet, caused from dinoflagellate, is another common parasitic infection that can affect Tomini tangs. The parasite appears as a golden or rust-colored dust covering the fish's body and gills, and it can be even more deadly than ick if not treated properly. Head and lateral line erosion is a condition that primarily affects tangs and other herbivorous fish, causing pitting and erosion of the head and lateral line areas. While the exact cause of this is still debated, it's believed to be related to poor water quality, inadequate nutrition, and stress. Bacterial infections can also occur, particularly secondary infections that develop after the fish has been weakened by a parasite or poor water conditions. Fin rot caused by various bacteria can cause fins to become frayed and deteriorated. Internal parasites, which are less visible, can also be a problem, particularly in wild-caught fish. These might include various types of worms, protozoans that can affect the fish's digestive system and their overall health. In the wild, Tomini tangs rely on cleaning stations staffed by cleaner wrasse and other fish to help remove parasites and dead tissue. These cleaning stations are crucial for maintaining the health of the reef fish community. The fish will often wait in line for their turn to be cleaned. The cleaner fish provide a valuable service by removing parasites, dead scales, and other debris, helping to keep the tangs healthy and parasite-free. Prevention is always better than treatment when it comes to fish diseases, and maintaining excellent water quality is the first line of defense against most health problems. The conservation status of the Tomini Tang is currently listed as least concern by most marine conservation organizations, though this doesn't mean they're without threat. Unlike some of their more famous cousins like the Yellow Tang, the Tomini Tang has been somewhat protected by their remote habitat and the difficulty in collecting them from their natural environment. The majority of their range falls within that coral triangle region of the Indo-Pacific, which includes some of the most biodiverse marine areas of the planet. Many of these places are protected by marine reserves, national parks, which also helps preserve both the fish and their critical habitat. However, the species does face several significant threats that could impact their long-term survival. Climate change and ocean acidification are perhaps the most serious long-term threats, as these factors directly impact the coral reefs that the Tomini Tang depends on for both food and shelter. Rising water temperatures can cause coral bleaching events, which kill the corals and destroy that complex reef structure that these fish need to survive. And then the ocean acidification caused by increased CO2 levels in the atmosphere make it harder for the corals to build that calcium skeleton, weakening their entire reef ecosystem. Pollution, particularly from agricultural runoff and coastal development, can also impact reef health by causing algae blooms and reducing that water quality. Overfishing of these fish in some areas can also have indirect effects of the Tomini Tang by disrupting the balance of that ecosystem. The aquarium trade does put some pressure on wild populations, though the difficulty in collecting these fish from their remote habitats means that collection numbers are relatively low compared to more easily accessible species. Unlike the Yellow Tang, which experienced significant collection pressure from Hawaii, the Tomini Tang's remote habitat provides some natural protection from overcollection. Conservation efforts in Indo-Pacific region have focused on establishing marine protected areas and regulating fishing activities to ensure long-term health of coral reef ecosystems. Many countries in the region have established no-take zones around critical reef areas, which helps protect not just the Tomini Tang, but the entire reef communities. Research into breeding biology of the Tomini Tang continues, with the hope that successful captive breeding programs might eventually reduce pressure on wild populations. However, like most marine fish, breeding tangs in captivity remains to be an extremely challenging proposition that requires specialized facilities and expertise. You can check out organizations like ORA and the Biota Group that specialize in captive breeding marine fish. The Tomini Tang has become increasingly popular in the reef aquarium hobby, and for good reason. They're one of the most efficient algae eaters you can add to a marine tank, and their smaller size makes them suitable for tanks that couldn't accommodate larger tang species. Currently, you can expect to pay anywhere from about $80 to $150 for a healthy Tomini Tang, depending on the size and the availability. That pricing comes from the fish being harder to collect, shipping from very far away, so sometimes you will pay a little bit more. The minimum tank size for a Tomini Tang, up for debate. For me, I would say a 75 gallon. I've had one in there for many years. He seems to enjoy it. And then some that get a little bit bigger, you could go up to, a 90 and 120 gallons, being even better to keep a tang in. Key isn't just the volume, it's also the tank dimensions. So I would expect you to have about 4 feet long. So you get that out of a 75. Once you get up into those 120 and more, you end up being almost 6 feet long. So plenty of swimming room for them to go back and forth and use all that energy that they have throughout the day. The rock work in the tank should be extensive, complex, gives them plenty of spots for algae to grow and them to graze upon, also giving them hiding spots for the fish and just places to explore throughout the day. Think of it as creating like a miniature coral reef to explore those caves, the overhangs, and those swim-throughs for them. Strong water flow is also crucial for a healthy tang, as it mimics their natural reef environment, and it's also going to help keep that algae healthy and growing just enough where they can go in and graze it off for you. Power heads that can push a lot of water in them, that would be perfect for this tang. The care level for Tomini tangs, generally moderate, mainly just because of their dietary requirements might be different from your basic level fish, and also you want to make sure you're prepared for crashes that might happen that could affect this tang. So keeping that water quality pristine is what you want to avoid things like ick. They're not typically recommended for your brand new Aquarius, but they're not as challenging as some of the more delicate marine species. Their temperament is generally peaceful, though they can be territorial with other tangs, especially other Ctenochaetus species. So if you put in multiple Tominis in a tank, that was going to be pretty tough. But if you find some with some different body shapes, add them at the same time, you're usually better off. At the end of the day, tang is going to be a king and queen of the tank. They control a lot of territory in the tank, so either way, you usually will see them get a little fussy with different fish. They do well with other reef fish, so your clownfish, cardinals, wrasse, angelfish, other tangs, all really good picks. And again, if possible, you want multiple tangs in the tank, always best if you can add them at the same time. Water parameters, keep them stable. Your temperature, 72 to 82, like we talked about, they're in tropical water, so it's warmer water. 78 degrees is right on the dot. pH 8.1 to 8.4. Your salinity 1.020 to 1.025, and your DKH 8 to 12. Like all tangs, they're going to be really sensitive to ammonia and nitrates, so keep up with your filtration. Do those water changes. It's going to be essential, because if a spike is to happen, they might survive it, but usually they will end up getting something, whether it's a bacterial infection, whether it's velvet, ick, whatever it might be. That amount of stress hitting them can usually cause these things to happen. The diet in captivity should mirror their natural feeding habits as closely as possible, so feed that marine algae all the time. They have dry sheets of algae you can buy to put on a clip. Feed that daily. Also, you're going to have algae growing in your tank just as it is, so if you have some hair algae growing in there, let them eat it. Keep it in there. Don't worry about cleaning it. They'll get in there and eat this stuff up. Also, you have your macroalgae that you can grow in the tank, whether you have a refugium that you can grow it in and put it into the tank, or I've even done it where I get a group of Chaeto and I'll just shove it behind the rocks to keep it from not floating all around the tank. It's stuck back there, and then the tangs can go back there and graze on it. So it gives them something natural to eat on, especially when they're first introduced into this tank. And they might be shy to eat from you. It's a great way to pull that off for you. They also are going to accept frozen foods. So your other fish are eating mysis shrimp, brine shrimp, they're eating pellets. They're going to eat all this stuff too. Flakes as well. I've even seen those algae wafers that you can buy. Throw one of those in there. Maybe they'll go after it. But again, they're going to eat meaty food too, like your other fish. But the main thing is keep that algae in there because it keeps their health up, keeps their colors looking great, and keeps you headache free from catching anything like ick. Key to success with the Tomini Tangs, give them a mature tank. Usually a reef tank is the best spot to put them because that's their natural environment. Since they're still caught in the wild, putting them somewhere that resembles the wild is perfect for them to flourish. Plenty of natural algae growing, let them graze throughout the day. They're also just going to be excellent reef fish that won't bother your corals and inverts. They're constantly grazing, helping keep the nuanced algae under control, and with proper care they can live for many years in captivity and become one of the most active and engaging fish in your tank. If you are to have a tang that does catch one of these things like ick, marine velvet, or flukes, these can always be treated. So think of things like medicine. There's a lot of different medicines out there, like Canoplex, that's a powder that you can mix into their food for them to eat. If you're someone that can get them out of that display tank and put them into a quarantine tank with something like copper or some kind of medicine that can help with those, put them in there. And then also you can get vitamins to put in their food to just keep their overall health great. The biggest thing, especially whenever you're buying these from a fish store, is asking them if they've already dipped the fish or kept them in a tank with copper. Sometimes that can save you a lot of headache before you actually put them in your display tank and end up giving something to the other fish. The Tomini Tang stands as a perfect example of how the smallest members of a fish family can have some of the biggest impacts on their ecosystem. From their crucial role as algae grazers, maintaining the delicate balance of the Indo-Pacific coral reefs, to their growing popularity as efficient cleaners in the reef aquariums, this species embodies the intricate connections that make marine ecosystems work. Their journey from a single specimen collected at the Gulf of Tomini in 1955 to becoming one of the most sought-after tangs in the aquarium trade tells a story of scientific discovery, conservation challenges, and the ongoing fascination humans have with the underwater world. Understanding their specialized feeding behavior, habitat requirements, and the threats that they face in the wild highlights the importance of protecting the coral reef ecosystems they call home. As we continue to learn more about these remarkable fish and work towards sustainable aquarium practices, the Tomini Tang serves as a reminder that even the smallest reef fish plays an essential role in maintaining the health and diversity of our ocean. Whether you encounter them while diving on a remote Indo-Pacific reef or caring for one in your home aquarium, these fish represent the incredible diversity and specialized adaptations that make coral reefs some of the most fascinating ecosystems on Earth. Thank you for joining us on a deep dive into the world of the Tomini Tang, a true professional of the reef cleaning crew.